Okay, here we go. You are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I'm your host, Adrian, and today we're talking about the Game Pass price increase, Chronos the New Dawn, and more. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe to notify when future episodes are released and show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. So, it is October, month of my birthday, month of Halloween, which means that we're in the only real, you know, holiday thematic time that we really usually do here on the podcast. We try to do a little bit more, but Halloween has been one that I very much enjoy. So we have a new horror game to talk about and some other horrific price increase news, which is insane. Before we get into all of that, there is a Game Boy, Lego Game Boy, which is insane. That's like a very cool novelty device, which I just wanted to talk about here because there's a whole article just on the history of building it and making it work in this way. And I think that's really cool. It's a cool device. It's cool seeing, at least Lego or other companies being able to make these type of small Game Boy stuff. You see that with like the micro Game Boy and all these kind of handheld stuff. I like it. I just kind of like talking about it. And Rock Band is something that we don't usually talk about here. Maybe Guitar Hero is something that we've talked about a lot more. But Rock Band is being delisted from its stores. This is specifically Rock Band 4 and its DLC and stuff, which is insane. Maybe this comes from a remaster package or something coming up in the future because I don't know if this means that the other Rock Band games are not available. It doesn't really seem like that here in the article, but apparently it supports the track list from the past Rock Band games. So it's definitely something that is, those type of games are just gone. The rhythm games, those games with heavy real world music license stuff, it's just all that's just kind of gone down the wayside. We don't really have that anymore in the gaming sphere. Just Dance is something that still comes out yearly, which is mind boggling that Just Dance is the game that surpassed the rhythm game franchise just in its entirety, right? Maybe it's the plastic music material instruments that you get. So that's definitely something. Now, Rip Rock Band. So we definitely have a few more things like Walter Goggins from the Fallout 76 Fallout show is going to be in Fallout 76. That is definitely something that is interesting. Is that we're getting Fallout 76 content. Additionally, that's to say this late in the life cycle that we still get all this 76 stuff. We played it a little bit recently, and you can check that out on the podcast. We talked a little bit of the experience and how it's been, but for the TV show content to start making its way into the multiplayer MMO stuff, which is really cool. Certainly, that's going to be stuff we're going to see probably in future games as well as like DLC, cosmetic, later pack add-on stuff, maybe even Easter egg shit. Like that's the stuff that we're not really going to see go away. But that's really cool for Fallout 76 to get that. And there's a new Witcher book. Now, we have not read the main Witcher book series like at all. I first did the little short story book, and that was basically as like as far as I've gotten. The world is cool. I think the Witcher world is really cool as far as the games and extra material. It's just really cool to talk about. Maybe we'll do a Witcher run eventually because of the new game coming out or whatever it might be coming out in the future, but that's not really forefront here on the podcast. And now we can talk about the main issue, the main topic that I think is on everybody's mind right now is subscription models. Subscriptions for games where you get a set amount of games, and these games are like from 20 plus years ago, where you could probably get them for a fraction of these subscription prices, and then the newer games. Like to me, the new games are really what drive constant, continuated, payment for these models because the only thing on Game Pass that I'm even caring about, that I would even think about trying, that I know is on the future, is The Outer Worlds 2. And The Outer Worlds 2 is something where I enjoyed the first one. I'm not necessarily excited for this sequel based on just the first game in general, not even just any kind of Obsidian's history or Xbox's history. It's just The Outer Worlds compared to things in the past is just not the same kind of vibes. And I don't think there's any other games on Game Pass worthy of paying that subscription either way. Like if something like Disco Elysium's on there, maybe, or all kinds of games for some specific person. But after looking at that tier list, like we can pull it up after looking at that tier list looking payment model of Xbox Game Pass, where you get like, here, we're going to get it up. I had the picture a little earlier. And so to me, when I look at this, I'm just like, wow, there is no real continuous value out of these. If I look at the 50 games, you that's a decent price just for $10. $10 a month, 50 games, that's decent. You'll probably be getting the, you know, mainline just games later on, like the 14.99 ones. You get the Xbox published games within a year of launch. I mean, 75 plus day games a year for the 400. And then you get these rewards and stuff. Online console multiplayer. This is something that I think is good to have included in a subscription model for like a console. And I'm going to say it right now. Xbox Game Pass needs to have World of Warcraft included on this just as a base. Like the subscription's paid for if you pay for this. I don't know why they're not doing that. That to me, that is the craziest thing. That World of Warcraft is not part of the Xbox Game Pass right now. Why? Why? I think that would be the best thing they could ever do. You're telling me that for the same price of World of Warcraft already, you don't get access for it, and now we're talking like double the monthly subscription for World of Warcraft subscription. I just want to double check here is $15 a month. I am 100% certain it's $15 a month. To this day, it's still, yeah, yeah, for 3 and 6 months plans. That's, totally okay for some people to pay. But for me, after Xbox spent all that money on buying out Blizzard and Activision and all the titles that we know they're not using, like they're not having any kind of grandiose plans for any of these titles. If they're not already on Game Pass, they're not doing anything with it. Like that's my take on it. If they haven't already ported any of the games they already bought on the Game Pass, they're not doing jack shit with it. And so World of Warcraft is something that I see talked about a lot. And, I'm only interested in World of Warcraft because Asmongold talks about it, and that's basically it. But it's one of the pillars of the MMO community, the gaming community. And it's something that if a game like that shuts down, then, that's just a big loss for players, the original creators, for their like just their history and their impact, their influence. And then just the overall love, because then we know we're never gonna get a World of Warcraft ever again if it just kinda shuts down and Microsoft just lets it die. Because I don't think anybody wants a new World of Warcraft specifically, but I definitely think that if there is gonna be a new World of Warcraft, the first game needs to be, like, preserved in some way, and having it be forever part of the current Xbox Game Pass subscription service would enable anyone anyone to play that MMO. We're like payment subscription besides. That's just, the barrier. But if you're a gamer of any sort, even if you don't like MMOs, you can still try it out because you probably already have games on Game Pass that you wanna play. The sports games, the racing games, those are super, super popular, and those probably alone, worldwide, globally, probably make them a decent amount of money compared to Western countries, America, United States, or, the UK, Canada, whatever. Those kind of areas are definitely okay. And, that's a lot of money overall. So maybe we should start getting more subscription payments for World of Warcraft through Xbox. And I see things like the new add-ons or expansions for World of Warcraft. And to me, I'm just like, don't are those free updates every time? Aren't some of the expansions costing money anyway? You know, include every single version of these games on Game Pass, and then you're set. I really don't know. I will say I got a free version of the newest Gears of War because I've had the other Gears of War, and I got that through Game Pass, just being a subscriber through Game Pass, and I had it. Like, that's really good, especially for somebody who's already paid for the Gears of War games previously in the past, all of them. I That's a really great benefit to me. Like, that's something I think is overlooked when it comes to Game Pass, is that if you purchased, already had, you definitively get access to things like that right there. And the caveat is that the new games, the new Xbox titles are not worthy of people subscribing to it because we know they're not good. Outer Worlds looks, fun. It looks fun based on what I've seen, and I enjoyed the Outer Worlds one at the time of playing it. But am I like, was that the kind of experience I expect? No, no. We all know the Outer Worlds was definitely a little pale in comparison to something like Fallout or Skyrim, which is essentially the same kind of games. I feel like I've heard that thing something like Avowed is something similar to that. I haven't played Avowed. It's on Game Pass probably. Now, Gears of War, mentioned that. We don't know what's happening with E-Day. We haven't seen that in forever. We had that remake that was just for Gears 1 on the PS5, which is cool. It's really cool. But there is no Gears of War collection, no Marcus Phoenix collection. Like, I think that's horrendous that we're teetering on the idea of making this prequel Gears of War game to try and get people on board with the franchise again, when we all know it is not going to be the same as we had previously because the vibes of the first game were pretty definitive. There were some pretty like horror type, dark, gritty vibes to the first game, and some of that kind of leaves the wayside in the later games for sure. I just feel like to try and get the feel for the first game in E-Day is just not going to be the same, and not having a Phoenix collection compared to the Master Chief Collection, like, we're talking about your second biggest shooter game of all time. Like, that's insane. And then they don't really have anything else going for them. Like, I think that they don't have anything else. We all know they can't do Halo. They can't do Halo Infinite in any fashion, which is quite insane. And, yeah, that's really just it. It's just Xbox Game Pass, we all know, is just not worth it anymore, and they need to start really leaning into benefits that you would get for paying at least the base subscription. Like, if World of Warcraft was just available for $10 a month on that essential vibe, that might be enough for someone like me to be like, all right, I would get back into World of Warcraft on an account that's, 10, 15 years old, just on a generic baseline. The costs for maintaining that game, World of Warcraft Online, and for the amount of money you pay to get it, just if you separate everything else from Blizzard and Activision, you don't even need to recoup that because there's still gonna be so many people forever who wanna experience play that game, and then they can start making I don't know, improvements to the first game just there, or a real sequel, a real MMO sequel, but we don't know if that's gonna happen because it's probably not. MMOs are expensive, they're hard to make, you know? I would like to see something like Final Fantasy 14 be put on Game Pass. I think that Star Citizen or something like that should be on Game Pass. That's just I want the barrier of entry, if it's gonna be money, to be minimized as much as possible, but I do not think that's gonna happen. I do not. And so, overall, cloud gaming. Cloud gaming is something that is a benefit, you know, but who necessarily wants to play games, like, on the go through cloud gaming? I mean, we all know that's not really gonna be feasible, like, on the train and stuff with your phone and things like that. I think it's gonna be, a more of a hindrance. You could always just download your game, right? Streaming a game is definitely more of like a, you know, stationary comfort because who really knows how that's gonna work? I haven't tried it. Multiplayer games, right? Multiplayer games have a lot of online components, fighting games, and with streaming, that might cause further issues. Who really wants to deal with that? So, yeah, it's just insane because I necessarily really enjoyed Game Pass because it had a lot of real titles that came out. Silksong. Silksong is on Game Pass. That is a massive benefit to a lot of people, right? Because it's about $20. The Silksong is $20. That's $10 more than the maximum subscription, and a few dollars less than the base subscription. So I don't know if you're gonna get that just necessarily right there. That's publishing games. Who could really say? But I think besides the third party games like Silksong, or if something like the Bandai Namco, Dragon Ball, Dark Souls games are on there, anything that's not specifically Xbox is a massive benefit in its own way, but the driving force needs to be Xbox games, and Xbox doesn't have games anymore. PlayStation says they don't have games. We all know they do, but Xbox Game Pass, we know for a fact, has no games in the future lined up that are warranting anything on their new subscription service, which is quite insane. It's quite insane to think about. But, everybody's been talking about it. Everybody's been saying a lot of stuff. I would really just like to see World of Warcraft, like, included, because to me, that should have been done from the get-go. That's just something that should have been done as soon as that purchase was completed, and they could have been like, "Yo, Xbox Game Pass PC, you get Warcraft." And then guess what? World of Warcraft console edition. I mean, I don't think it's that hard. We can plug in mouse and keyboards to our systems right now. We have them wireless Bluetooth. You can make add-ons for these fucking games and make them have controller support. It's time that we see real concerted effort into making games a little more accessible in terms of their longevity, right? No one's gonna wanna only play World of Warcraft on mouse and keyboard, especially in the future. So whether it's World of Warcraft 2 or something like that, I just think it's about the benefit, right? Final Fantasy has it. I prefer mouse and keyboard, but controller works for a lot of people. And it's just really shitty to say that, like, I don't see a benefit to having Game Pass for me anymore. I just haven't, because all the games that are from like 2015 and beyond, like from 2015 and before, I have. I have every game from 2015 before, like in physical version. So even in that regard of Xbox games, that's not worth it to me. So I want to see new games, new reasons to get Game Pass, but overall, I don't think it's that worthy to me anymore. But maybe with Gears of War E-Day, if that's necessarily a worthwhile subscription, or if there's some kind of sale and I'll want to try out Outer Worlds 2. But that's also like on multiplat. So like the sale benefit already beats there. So That's the Xbox Game Pass rant. We've talked about that forever. We're gonna keep talking about Game Pass. I think it's Xbox's only saving grace besides, like, the cloud gaming, which is a secondary benefit. Their only benefit now is Game Pass. We all know that they're not gonna have games that are massively beneficial to being, like, exclusive on there, but that's it. Anyway, I tried garlic ice cream at Garlic Fest. Isn't that crazy? It was just chunks of garlic on top, and then you just crunch into it and taste like garlic with, like, vanilla ice cream. I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't try that again. Good thing it was cheap. It was actually, not awful for something called Garlic Fest. I was already used to the garlic taste, so it was very good. Now, we can talk about the video games that I've been playing. And like I said, it's Halloween. October is the best month, in my opinion. It's just I like celebrating the horror vibes, and the horror video games is something that I want to see pushed forward. And so I try to play the newest horror games in terms of the 3D action type vibes of horror games. Like, there's a lot of horror games that are more laid back, like text based or something like that. But the action horror vibes is definitely like where I'm at. So, Chronos: The New Dawn. We've talked about games like Callisto Protocol, games that have been very much inspired and definitely taken inspiration and all kinds of, nostalgia or notes or whatever from Dead Space. And then we can talk about all the kinds of other horror influences there. But we all know that if you're going to try and make a 3D action type horror game that's not Silent Hill or Resident Evil, you're trying to imitate Dead Space. And to me, Dead Space has played the best compared to Silent Hill. Let's just get that straight. Like, Silent Hill games never played necessarily well, or Resident Evil, which have been iffy on how you can control them. Everybody says that probably once Resident Evil 4 came out, the controls became a lot better, started the 3D action type of over the shoulder combat, but it hasn't really, to me, been the same type of waves that Dead Space hit, like that horror vibe. I mean, I will say Dead Space is far scarier than any Resident Evil game, any Silent Hill game. Dead Space nails it on the head with that shit. And I'll fight anybody who says otherwise because they're just wrong. The Dead Space franchise is the pinnacle of horror gaming, horror action gaming. So, with Chronos: The New Dawn, I think that it compared to Dead Space, it's like a 7. Definitely a 7 out of 10 just based on its controls, the type of mechanics that you have for the combat. I mean, that to me is where Dead Space shines because you have to play that game by its rules in order to survive and get through it. And you can say that all that for like Silent Hill or Resident Evil, but those games are built on their own type of identity. And while, yeah, Chronos: The New Dawn is trying to take inspiration from Dead Space in definitely a lot of ways, it does the same thing that Callisto Protocol does, which is it has a very repetitive and oftentimes irritating or cumbersome and actually like you fight against this mechanic as you play the game. And to me, that is the headshots and the charging of the pistols and how you have to kill these enemies with the little bit of fire and stun them. Like, I am upgrading as far as we can in this early portion of the game. I'm only on like chapter 2, right? I've been playing here. I even have it. I have it on the Switch. Like, we're going to talk about the fact that I have it here on the Switch. So, there it is on the Switch, right? Been playing it. Of course, there's Silk Song and Hades been trying to play that, right? So, it doesn't necessarily run as well you would think on this on the Switch, which is not something that I'm here to knock off onto that because I know I could have gotten on the PS5 and it would run perfectly fine. I wanted on the Switch for that convenience where I could just play it on a handheld, just here in bed on the couch, on the go. I benefit. That's my choice. And I looked it up. They updated the thing where if you dock it while you're playing the game, it doesn't crash the game. That was a big reason why I bought it on the Switch. So to me, I think that it's the gameplay that really hinders this game because you get to rooms where you just have to fight one enemy at a time because you can control how the combat goes, which is totally fine. But you're not playing at Dead Space's rules anymore. Like you're not utilizing those tools in that same way. In this game, you're kind of just like, I'm gonna go trigger this encounter and try to kill this one enemy at one time. Because if you're just gonna have multiple enemies at once, you're just not gonna have a good time in this game. Because so far, the early weapons are just not good. I don't like the charging abilities with how you have to charge the gun and then try to get a headshot and then do as much damage as you can just by that. Because you can't really do a lot of damage from body shots, and the melee is not good either. So a lot of it is definitely not Dead Space, and that comes from the environments. I mean, the environments don't necessarily feel that intriguing early on. There's definitely like lore intrigue and some thematic stuff to it that is definitely part of it, but it doesn't feel like the area is meant to be itself scary. And we don't have enemies like jumping out of us from corners or any kind of things like that. It's very structured. And with Close to Protocol, that was something that really hindered it, especially with its combat. That combat where it's kind of forced you to not really want to use weapons, the shooting weapons, the range weapons, and it really wanted you to engage with the melee and do damage and kill that. That killed the game. Like, that was something that I remember being a big, big annoyance. So, I am still having fun with it in terms of the horror vibe and the world building, the lore, and that is what's keeping me interested in it. So, like, I don't wanna say that, like, that is not good, but I'm saying that we're talking games that are trying to beat that Dead Space. They're either trying to meet it or beat it. And we're talking like a 7 in terms of the attempt, which is good. Like I would recommend this game for people who want that action vibe. There's no difficulty setting, and to me, like this is as far as I've seen, there wasn't an option to choose a difficulty early on in the game, and there's no way to change it mid game. So like I don't know specifically if there is difficulty for Chronos to New Dawn. Maybe I could actually just look it up while we're talking here. Okay, so no, yeah, see, it doesn't have difficulty settings, which I don't like that. Only because I'm trying to think about the accessibility of, like, everybody, and I do think difficulty settings is a good bar for accessibility. You know, money is one thing. People don't wanna pay premium prices or let alone, like, sale prices and then be hard locked because the difficulty is just a little too much for them. A horror game is a little too much for everybody. Now listen, I was a young lad before. I was interested in horror stuff. And to me, when you're also trying to face like I mean, come on. I had parents or family who bought me games at rated M and then I just played them, right? We rented them from Blockbuster because they did that. So like let's not pretend that like these kids aren't playing these horror games. There's kids playing on the Switch right now most likely. And to me, it's like yeah, the resource management, the uh controls and all that stuff, you have to overcome that in order to play the game, right? The base way. But let's not forget that, like, sometimes making enemies meant to be hard to beat inherently isn't always fun for some people. Maybe they just wanna use the weapon, mow down the enemy relatively well, and then move on, experience the game. So, like, we're talking ways where, like, we're meant to be kind of faux badasses, right? You're telling me that Isaac by Dead Space 2 and 3 is scared in any way of these necromorphs? Like, nah. And like in this game, we play as a traveler. The traveler is someone who goes back in time to go fix the events of this game, and they're trained or at least knowledgeable, ready for this shit. Why the hell are they scared? That's that's my take. Us as players, we should be scared, but the gameplay should enable the player to feel like a badass, even though that's what they present in the world. Isaac is a mechanic. It makes sense in the first game to him to be deal with that. You know what? Be a schizophrenic in the second game, and you have a buddy cop in in the third game. Third game is basically just a buddy cop military game if you play it on co-op. And you know what? That guy just has also mental issues, but he's not afraid. He's definitely not afraid. I forget his name. He has like his own DLC or all that kind of stuff. He's part of the story. But yeah, that's my take on Chronos: The New Dawn. It's just a game where it takes all the right things from horror genre, puts it in a 3D action game, but the gameplay is a little bit of a hindrance. It's definitely not like up to par with something like that space, which has difficulty settings. It's been tweaked enough to where it could have an easy, normal, hard, impossible, and all that kind of stuff. This game doesn't. So I would just if I had to rank it as somebody who didn't finish the game up until its end, just early on impressions, how I'm struggling with the overall gameplay of it, it's a 7. It's definitely a 7. And hopefully we finish this game early on and it's still October, we can do Silent Hill F because I'm not gonna knock that game off for this gameplay. I think that because I said it before, Resident Evil and Silent Hill go off of the fact that have already established what their gameplay type of style is, and changing it kind of muddies the waters there. It kind of isolates earlier fans and then, newer fans. You want something newer and fresh. Now that comes down to this like control scheme, right? Those games play so poor the whole time. And I don't know if that's something that is good for a lot of people, but I'm definitely gonna talk about how that works when I play it. But the horror setting and that those games are so out there that I don't really know where to begin. There's lore videos and all that kind of stuff where people can talk about Silent Hill F stuff. But I've said it before, like Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9, I don't think deserve the Resident Evil title, but they're called Resident Evil, and they're kind of set in the Resident Evil world. You get little hints of things that are about from Resident Evil, like Umbrella and maybe a character at the end. But no, no. Besides some of the gameplay stuff, some of the lore stuff, the Resident Evil games, the newer ones just aren't the same, unless it's like Resident Evil 2 where like it's at Raccoon City and it's like all kinds of zombie stuff. It's not just like the same Resident Evil 4 vibes. We go to a different country and things are a little different, but they're not necessarily the same as like all the other games. Like that's my thing. They're kind of just rehashing Resident Evil 4 a whole bunch in every single vibe, right? And at least in its own type of way. But Chronos: The New Dawn, we'll see where it goes, right? We'll see what the ending has in store. And Silk Song, we finished it 93% for Silk Song. I mean, that's not 100%. I don't necessarily care for all the tools because I didn't even really feel like all the tools were all that fun or engaging to use. And we definitely did all the bosses. We did not get all the uh I don't know what else we missed. Oh, we did not get all the like bug bibliography stuff, the compendium stuff. Like I'm not killing every enemy 10 times. That's just a little too much for a 127-hour playthrough, 120 plus. Ooh. Ooh. Hollow Knight took me like 30. Hollow Knight, the God mode, whatever edition, took me 30 hours to finish in its entirety. when I first played that, way back when. Now, I did not expect Silksong to take me this long. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. But man, is that a good game. It's not game of the year. It is not. Game of the year still goes to Expedition 33. Like that, like to me, that's just like that was far more of an enjoyable experience. Like definitely you kind of take how the game presents its world and its story and its experience to you. And the games that are kind of like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, where the story itself wasn't presented in a way that's cohesive or tangible for the app for the first playthrough. The first playthrough. Expedition 33 story fucking took the cake. So like so far, that is game of the year. I don't even care about gameplay, right? Because this is a sequel. We're talking about sequels, right? I mean, RPGs. Like we have RPGs with so many counter mechanics. Yes, Expedition 33. After Halloween or Silent Hill or whatever, we're still gonna try and do Metal Gear 3, and hopefully a volume 2 collection is presented to us, and we get 4 and 5 all when we bundle. But I might have to emulate Metal Gear Solid 4. I don't want to. This is me pressuring them to make the Master Collection faster. I don't wanna have to emulate, but I will. And so that's just it. And then Hades, right? We're trying to beat Hades because I never beat Hades. I never killed Hades or got into the end. I never even seen it. I just kind of stopped once I got there. I was like, the runs take a little too long, or at least for me early on. Like the runs just take too long to go from starting to the end, way back in like 2020, last time I played or whatever. And Hades 2 seems like a fun game. We might try it out. So we haven't read a book in a while. I've been trying to find a copy of Control Freak by Cliff Bleszinski. Obviously the guy who took on the helm of Gears of War early on, and then yeah, I really want to read that book. It just sounds pretty fun. And so Gen V season 2, that was insane. We're still in the middle of it. A lot of intrigue. Kind of feels the same as the first season, and let me say, I am sick and tired of that weird shit. It's too in your face now. It was kind of funny and irreverent in the first show, and then obviously with the college setting, you kind of get to go loosey goosey. But by season 2, I'm tired of it. It's kind of a little too all over the place. But I never thought I'd say this. Peacemaker season 2 seems really fun from what I saw from I think we all know what clips they are. So the Nazi world, I'm in. I'm in. I do have HBO or whatever it's on, so I will probably watch until that scene because I wanna know how that goes. That seems fun. It seems like they're having really fun a lot of fun with the Peacemaker show. I'm excited now. And yeah, we're basically going up to 40 minutes here, we're rounding down to the end of the episode. I don't have much to say here, we're moving. I'm turning 29 and we're in a different spot here for the podcast, so we don't know what's gonna happen. And until then, I think we're just gonna keep playing games, doing everything like always. I mean, it looks like a nice Monday, nice and warm out from when I was walking around. So maybe in the winter we'll be talking about different kind of stuff, multi-streaming even. I mean, the possibilities are endless because we're gonna try and do a lot more. Gonna get a new mic, that's for sure. Hopefully it picks up a lot better. But it's mostly the video games. I haven't thought I've been this behind because Silksong took so long, and I want to finish the Metal Gear playthrough by the end of the year. That is something that I am gung ho about, and it would be a lot easier once we're all moved to just play that game. Because doing games with walkthroughs is annoying. It's not, I just don't want to take all this time doing a regular playthrough because then I would just be like so lost the whole time. And the new games, I try to stick up on the new games that kind of hold you back. But anyway, peace.